So purchasing a letter online is a huge loophole, right? And the online websites, they make them look as realistic as they can. They're signed by licensed health professionals in the state. They make it look like it came directly from them, when in reality, it's these websites that are providing these letters, and they're just rubber stamped by these healthcare professionals.
Welcome to your Landlord Resource podcast. Many moons ago, when I started as a landlord, I was as green as it gets. I may have had my real estate license, but I lacked confidence and the hands-on experience needed when it came to dealing with tenants, leases, maintenance, and bookkeeping. After many failed attempts, fast forward to today, Kevin and I have doubled our doors and created an organized, professionally operated rental property business. Want to go from overwhelmed to confident? If you're an ambitious landlord or maybe one in the making, join us as we provide strategies and teach actionable steps to help you reach your goals and the lifestyle you desire, all while building a streamlined and profitable rental property business. This is your Landlord Resource podcast. Hello there, landlords. Stacy with your Landlord Resource here. I'm flying solo today. Things are a bit crazy for us right now, and of course, all the crazy stuff seems to happen all at one time, so we're running in 50 different directions these days. And Kevin is running in one of those directions while I hold down the fort here. Today, we are changing things up a little bit. Not only am I on my own, kinda, I am also interviewing Logan Miller from Our Pet Policy. We are discussing ESAs, or emotional service animals, as well as talking about having pets in your units and what landlords can do to reduce the risks often associated with allowing pets in their rental properties. We have a podcast, I think it was episode 22, on the pros and cons of renting to pet owners that we did a couple months ago. And we discussed in depth the hassles you might encounter when renting to pet owners. We also provided quite a bit of information on the benefits of renting to pet owners as well. If you have not already listened to that episode, it's definitely worth checking out, and I'll link it in the show notes. There is a lot of misinformation that has been going around about ESAs, so today we are going to try and clarify any questions you may have about how to handle the situation when you get a request from an applicant or even an existing tenant who states they want to bring on an ESA. So, Our Pet Policy is a comprehensive pet management and ESA verification service, where a lot of these services typically work to focus on larger apartment complexes and property management companies. Our Pet Policies does assist rental property owners with smaller portfolios as well, which is not always the case with other pet management services. Their service includes a lawyer-vetted ESA verification system and pet screening before the animal is approved, as well as an identification system of pets that are on your property already. So, without further ado, here is our interview with Logan Miller. Hi, Logan. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us today.
Hi, Stacy. Thank you for having me on here. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so you reached out to us because you thought it would be a good idea to have a discussion about animals and rental properties. Now, we did a podcast a few months ago discussing the pros and cons of renting to pet owners, but we didn't delve too much into the subject of pet screening or ESAs, so we're hoping you can talk about that a little bit more in detail today. And I'd like to start with ESAs. And as many of our listeners know, the emotional support animals, or those who require them, are protected under federal housing laws, which means if a current tenant or an applicant requests to have an ESA in their rental property, landlords have to allow them once they're verified. Now, this is correct, right?
Yeah, and we'll talk about a small exception, I think, later in the call today, but that is correct. In general, any emotional support animal accommodation request needs to be approved once it's been verified.
Okay, so the key word there is verified. And I suppose verification can be a litigious matter if it's not done correctly, which is likely why some landlords just approve an ESA without even going through the process of verifying that there's a need and that the certification was legally obtained. So, with that, we have seen and heard a lot of landlords wondering about the ESA letters a tenant or an applicant brings to them, worried that they're fakes or maybe invalid. Can you tell us about how a landlord can spot a fraudulent letter or differentiate between a valid letter versus one that was purchased online by a company that just sells these letters?
Yeah, and it's real easy if you can see a lot of letters because they'll use the same templates and stuff like that. But just in general, ones that are purchased online will have a lot more information around the rules. It'll talk about rules made in 1988 and the fair housing and the rights of the tenant and have a big long list of that. Whereas a typical general one that's just prescribed by a doctor, a local doctor, a local healthcare professional will be kind of short and sweet and to the point and say, hey, they're my patient. They have a disability and a disability related need that this, dog or this cat is going to fix for them. Please allow them to accommodate that. And so they'll be a lot shorter than the online purchase ones seem to be pretty long and pretty litigious looking.
Okay. So, yeah, pretty scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, a follow up question to that. I know that California has taken steps to reduce fraudulent ESA requests by setting parameters for qualifications that the person must meet. I believe the person who wants an ESA has to be under the care of a licensed healthcare professional for 30 days before that certificate can be issued. So, are you seeing that states are being more definitive in their descriptions, requirements on what and how landlords can legally investigate when someone puts in a request for an ESA?
Yeah. And so we are seeing some more of that. So California they included the 30-day minimum, which has been great. But also there's these online websites are now post dating ESA letters by 30 days, and so it still keeps it
Oh,
from being able to get it immediately. And so it does help, but they are kind of finding their ways around it. California actually has an even better law to where unless they are a medical doctor, so a counselor, a social worker, they can't provide an ESA accommodation letter legally unless they have in-person visits, which means that they can't go online and purchase them from these websites. Anyways, but there's still a lot of social workers and counselors selling them from those websites. They come across your desk and look legitimate. So if you have properties in California or in Colorado, that's something that you can look to as well.
okay. And if a state has their own fair housing laws, the state law takes precedence over that federal law. Am I correct on that?
Yeah. So the federal law, the emotional support animal accommodations need to be allowed. And like we said, in, the large majority of all rentals. So that takes precedence over the state laws, but the state laws govern who's licensed. So they cover the licensed healthcare professionals and what those licensed healthcare professionals can do. So those licensed healthcare professionals can't legally write that letter. At that point, you have proof that that letter isn't reliable. And so therefore, you don't need to approve the accommodation request.
Oh, okay. Well, that clarifies quite a bit, actually. Okay. Can you talk a little bit about like pet ESA rules and maybe any loopholes?
Yeah. So purchasing a letter online is a huge loophole, right? And the online websites, they make them look as realistic as they can. They're signed by licensed health professionals in the state. They make it look like it came directly from them when in reality, it's these websites that are providing these letters and they're just rubber stamped by these healthcare professionals. But also, another good loophole that tenants will use a lot of times is when they're submitting an application for their animal, they feel they have a better chance of getting in if they don't disclose they have an emotional support animal, or they know that their animal isn't approved, but they have friends that got emotional support animals and it works. So they don't disclose it and just have in the back of their mind, if they ever get caught, that they'll then provide an ESA letter. And so anyways, always making sure that you have in your lease that an application needs to be submitted and approved before ever bringing an animal onto the property, and that covers emotional support animals, service animals, pets, and also visiting animals. Visiting animals is another one people will use as a loophole. Catch them with an animal. Oh, that's my mom's dog. She's visiting for the day.
All the
And
time.
yep. And so, anyways, having that right in your lease that there's an application process. And so if they're caught with one, that it's a lease violation, if your state allows an unauthorized animal fee, et cetera.
Okay. So let me ask you this then. What are some circumstances when someone would be exempt from having an ESA?
Yeah. And so go and look up the exemptions from the fair housing. And just to be brief, typically if you own and manage 4 units or less, or less than 4 units typically, so 3 units, you aren't required to abide by fair housing rules,
Right.
but it also has some other stipulations. So one of them is, are you in the business of renting it, right? And so if you have a specific LLC for each property and you bought those specifically to rent out, you may not qualify under that. But had you purchased a home, you moved, purchased another home, couldn't sell it, end up renting it. Anyways, at that point, you qualify under that. And so legally wouldn't have to approve an emotional support animal. You still would have to approve a service animal. But if you think you fall in that category, definitely worth double checking.
Okay. And so that would also apply to people who are house hacking, correct?
Yeah, correct. So especially if you live in the unit. So my first one was a duplex, and we had tenants that wanted an emotional support animal. And I just let them know, hey, by law, I don't have to allow that. But if you do want an animal, I charge a $300 non-refundable fee. And that's to clean the carpet. Explain to them what that fee was for. And even though they only lived there for 6 months, they paid it for their cat, and we're happy to do so. Anyways, but yeah, make sure you're following the rules there, because it can get expensive if you don't.
Okay. Well, that is very informative. Thanks. Now, you have verified the pets that are in our Idaho complex, and all was well with our tenants. But you got any juicy stories about landlords and ESAs? Like, I don't know, maybe a fake certification was discovered or a case where a landlord like really blew it?
Yeah, lots of stories. One of them, and it's actually a YouTube video we have, where I interviewed a, a person, and they had an apartment complex with 77 units. They had just hired a new property manager, and they had a no pets policy. And Fair Housing was actually doing a sting operation. And so they called and said, hey, I want to apply. And they asked some questions, and they said, I have a dog. So the new property manager said, oh, hey, sorry, we don't allow pets. Here's some other apartments that do allow pets. Maybe go check out. And he was like, well, actually, it's an emotional support animal. And the property manager didn't really know a lot about it. And he was like, hey, you should go look at these other apartments. They're made for pets. They allow pets. And they got him 5 different times telling that fair housing sting operation person who was acting as the tenant to go elsewhere, that their emotional support animal wouldn't be welcome. And so they got hit with originally it was a fine from the Department of Justice for like $250,000. And anyways, through the court process, they got it knocked down to $62,000.
Holy
But then they were
moly.
$18,000 in fees. And so it ended up costing them $80,000 out of pocket. And so anyway, so one good reason, make sure that, when you do verify it, you are using correct language, et cetera.
Wow. Yeah. You know what? We did a podcast recently where we talked about the influx of money that has come now for this sting operations, and they're doing more and more of them. And a lot of them are on the phone because they can do them quickly and easily, and then all those fines are going back right back into the system to keep trying to catch people who aren't following the rules.
Yeah, correct. Always want to make sure that anyone that's tenant facing and answering those questions, that they know exactly what they can and can't say.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else about ESAs that we missed and you'd like to talk about?
Going back to the heart of an ESA and its purpose, they're created for people that have a legitimate disability and that also have a disability related need specific for that animal. And so there'll be healthcare professionals often don't fully understand it. So they know that they can write prescriptions. And so if a patient of theirs asks them for it, they'll write, hey, they're my patient, and I'm recommending 3 emotional support dogs for this person. And oftentimes they don't know the rules around it. And so following up with them and making sure, hey, is there a disability? Make sure don't ask any specifics about that disability, right? But say, hey, we want to confirm that there is a disability and that there's a separate disability related need for each of those animals, that one of those animals can't suffice. And anyways, and so oftentimes we've had some recommend up to 7 emotional support animals. And in reality, after we got done, it was like, okay, they need 2. And it's like, these other 5 are not emotional support animals. So part of it is educating even healthcare professionals in what that is and the whole purpose behind it.
Okay, wow. It's pretty interesting, to be honest with you. I mean, I can't think of an instance where someone would need multiple service animals to deal with a disability. Now, I'm not going to assume anything, but I mean, I can see that there was somebody that was certainly trying to help someone take advantage of the system there. So, okay, let's switch gears here a little and we'll talk about pets in rental properties. A lot of renters have pets already. What would you say is the overall percentage of renters that have pets?
Yeah. And when we started, we looked at the percentages. There's lots of polls out there saying it's right around 70% of tenants have pets. And after we rolled it out, we're seeing closer to 50%. And I think part of that gap is when a tenant loses a pet, anyways, it takes several years before they get a new pet. And so I think there are 70% of them that have pets throughout their residency, but there's times that a lot of them have had one pet that has passed away, or they don't have it currently, but they will be getting another pet in the future. But so typically about 50%. And so if you have a no pets policy, you're kind of throwing 50% of that rental pool, to the side saying, hey, you don't qualify.
Yeah, in California, we do have a no pet policy in our sixplex. And part of that reason is because the walls aren't super insulated, the floors aren't great, and they're really small spaces. And quite frankly, we've been burned a couple times on the damage from pets. So, and your 50% number is spot on. We just had a vacancy recently, and I would say if we had 12 people that applied on the first day, 6 of them had pets or had inquired about pets, because nobody reads that there's no pets allowed on the actual ad. But we did. We have to turn people away, but we got a great guy in there, so we're really happy with that. So let's talk about the benefits of allowing pets in your rental properties.
Yeah. And so real quick, one really unique study that we did that I don't know that anyone else has done is there's something that third-party property managers offer called a pet guarantee. And so if there's damage done by the pets that's in excess to the security deposit, they'll guarantee either $1,000, $2,000, or up to $5,000 of coverage for that. But in exchange, they get to keep the pet fees. That monthly pet rent, the average across the nation is $30. That one-time pet fee is $300. And so we took a survey of them and we said, hey, how often have you had to pay out on it? Because we can see how much damage they're having to pay out on. And we found some that have over 300 pets that they're guaranteeing that have never had to pay out on a guarantee. And so and there's other ones, on average, it was less than 2% that they were paying out on. And so the ones that had never paid out on it and had a lot of animals and had been doing it for a long time, we asked them what their secret sauce was. And they said really good mid-lease inspections, and that they would find damage, and that wasn't uncommon to find some damage. But then they would come up with a mitigation plan to make sure that there wasn't any further damage. And then they would get a bid on how much it would cost to fix that damage. And they would say, hey, you can pay for it now, or we can break it up over the next 6 months. You can be making payments for it. And then we'll have its additional security deposit at that point. and to go towards paying to fix that. And so they had done that to where any damage that had been caused all got covered from the security deposit. And so they were never having to pay for it out of pocket.
Okay, wow, that's so do the tenants pay for that guarantee?
Yeah. So they're paying for it via pet fees. And so
Got
the
it.
pet rent and the one-time pet fee.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. So what do you think? When you consider the potential risks and damage to the property and the cleaning that's needed once they move out, is it worth the hassle for landlords to allow pets?
Yeah. So I think so. In one example, we had a section of four fourplexes next to each other. So 16 units total. And this was back before we had a real thorough ESA process. So we got burned as well. We had an older couple with 2 ESA cats. Their son moved in. He had 2 ESA dogs. Dogs chased the cats. Cats ended up hiding on top of the cabinets. They destroyed the cabinets, the doors, the carpet, and it was $6,000 worth of damage. Tenants left middle of the night. And so that was just on us. And anyways, and we found out that son had an online purchase ESA letter. And that's when that was the straw that broke the camel's back. Right. And we're like,
Right.
hey, game on, we're going to figure this out. But anyways, and so we did a real thorough evaluation, and we had a no pets policy in those 16 units, and 13 of those 16 units had pets in them. And anyway, so at that point, we kind of realized that pets are going to end up in there whether you allow them or not. So why not collect the pet fees? And anyways, and then we tightened down, and kind of our pet policy was born out of it, out of our frustrations with it. But anyway, so we look at it as they're going to hide them. We're going to get them in. There's 50% of tenants that want them, and there's not enough rentals that allow them. They're going to find a way. And so we allow pets in our rentals, and the pet fees help for those extra costs.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we do have them in Idaho, and quite honestly, we've never had a problem. They just went in for an inspection. We just got a notification on that, and they said no issues. So, I mean, I think when you are going in, you're doing inspections, it makes a huge difference. And we encourage all of our landlords to go in at least twice a year. What we do is twice a year and do inspections, even if there aren't pets, but you're looking for other lease violations. You need to check the smoke detectors and change air filters and do all those kinds of, preventative maintenance to keep the unit up to date. So it's always a smart idea to get in there and do those inspections. And especially if you're having pets, just like you said, that's when they go in mid-year and they're seeing the damage that was done, then you can mitigate and create a remedy for it. So
Yeah, exactly. And one more thing I'd like to throw in there is just double check those mid-lease inspections that they're also using a black light when they go in. So you can clean like cat pee, with a cleaner and stuff to where it smells good in there. But then once it gets humid and it starts to crystallize, that smell will come back as well. But you can identify that with a black light and say, hey, we've got to replace this carpet. It's been damaged, wasn't cleaned properly. And you can catch that mid-lease and not have that come back at a later point. But yeah, everything.
very interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Whoa. Okay.
And so
And
it
that's
needs to
for
be,
just pet urine.
yeah. So in cat urine specifically, and it smells 6 times worse than most other urines out there. And it needs to be cleaned properly with an enzyme cleaner. So it's broken all the way down and removed. Anyways, and so if it's not cleaned properly, it'll smell for up to 6 years. And that smell will come back every time it gets humid and continues to break down.
Wow, that is something I did not know. All right, I want to wrap it up here with a few more questions. So, what are your thoughts on pet restrictions? Should landlords have criteria set on maximum weight limits for pets, restricted breeds, fish tanks, things like that?
Yeah. And so I think having it real clear, I know some parents like to have a pet for their kids, right? And so if you can limit it to up to a 2-gallon fish tank, they might be satisfied with that. And which isn't much more than having a gallon pitcher of water to water their plants that are in there. Anyway, so I like allowing some pets in there. As far as breed restrictions, we find actually Great Danes are supposed to be known as one of the best apartment dogs because they're so calm and they lay around a lot. They're docile. Anyway, so the weight limit kind of seems kind of not productive in a lot of ways. There's a lot of dogs that are anxious and have a lot of energy and are really loud. Chihuahuas always
Right.
barking, right? They're loud. They also Chihuahuas, bite people more so than any other dog out there. Anyways, but the two that are important that do cause the most deaths in the United States by far is the pit bull is number one, and then Rottweiler is number two. And so it makes total sense that if you were to allow those, that those might be the restricted breeds because of that reason. Or if you do allow them, just require them to cover a liability, have some liability insurance. And so if it ever were to happen, they're covered and it's not a liability for you.
Right. And so you can require that they have renter's insurance. And I'm assuming that on the renter's insurance that they have an addition onto the policy about pets, correct?
Yeah, yeah. And so you can require that they carry that extra liability insurance that would cover their dog.
Okay. Well, this has been really informative. Thank you. Can you tell our listeners about our pet policy and how your service can help them with ESA verifications and pet management and such?
Yeah, and so we take on that whole process. We make sure and collect all their information, the rabies record. We remind them when the rabies needs updated. We collect those pictures, so it's real easy to identify the animals on the property. See if they have animals they aren't supposed to when doing inspections. But then also on the ESAs. So we do the ESA verification better than, anyone else because we are collecting these letters across thousands and thousands of units and constantly finding healthcare professionals that are selling them online, doing it unethically. If they continue to lie about it to, to try and require them to get in, we turn them into licensure boards. They get fined, they get convicted of deceit and fraud, et cetera. And so we're happy to take all that on for you if that's not something that you want to do. And anyway, so that's some of the things that we provide.
Wow, that's very helpful. And landlords have a lot on their plates. So your service can really help them eliminate the unknown about pets as well as any concerns about them violating fair housing when it comes to processing those ESA verifications. So I understand that you have a special offer for our listeners. Would you like to tell them a little bit about your pricing and then how they can take advantage of that offer?
Yeah. And so we typically start out with 75 cents per unit. And so, anyways, give us a call and we can walk you through that. But yeah, we're going to do a special offer. So all you need to do is mention that you heard us on here, and we'll go ahead and give you the first 3 months free. And so if you have an emotional support animal that you need verified right away, come jump on. It'll be free. We'll go through that process and kind of show you our value and how we can make your life easier. And after that 3 months, if you want to continue, then it would be at the regular price. But love to give you 3 months free to come try us out.
Wow, that is amazing. Thank you so much, Logan. I mean, you guys are offering peace of mind and savings. So that's a real win win for our listeners. So, last question. How can the listeners learn more or get in touch with you?
Yeah. So the easiest way, go to ourpetpolicy.com. You can contact us there. It has our phone number, our email. You can fill out a contact form. If you're on social media, come follow us on Facebook. It's called Our Pet Policy. Or if you're on LinkedIn, Landlord Tech is our parent company name, and Our Pet Policy is our product. So, anyways, yeah. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us as well. We love, even if it's just answering a question for you.
Yeah, and I noticed on your website you do have several blog posts that pertain to questions that people would have. Very informative information over there too, guys. So, you should go and check them out. Well, thank you, Logan, for coming on here today and answering all those questions and giving us your insight. It was very informative and very helpful. And I know that our listeners are going to learn quite a bit today.
Yeah. Thank you, Stacey. It's been a pleasure being on here.
Yeah, thanks so much. Okay, wow. We covered quite a bit of information there. And I don't know about you, but I learned some really good stuff during that interview. Logan's a great guy. He's very knowledgeable on anything about pets and rental properties, and we love that he's an investor himself. So he gets it, and he knows firsthand the issues that arise with pets and ESAs. We're very grateful that they have offered the first 3 months free of charge to our listeners. So go on to Our Pet Policy and create an account. You'll need to input information about your properties and each one's pet policies if you already have them. And don't worry if you don't. They have pre-formatted policies for about 25 states and counting. If your state is not on the list, you can reach out to their support team and they will work directly with you to get your state added. They offer free training on creating a solid pet policy as well. Again, they can walk you through the laws and the best practices around what you can and cannot say in your pet policies so that you don't put yourself at risk. It's a great service that they offer, especially when there's so much to know about fair housing and state-specific laws. The best way to get that 3 months free is to either call them directly or email their support team and let them know you were referred by your Landlord Resource, and they will add that promotion to your account. You can just use the Contact Us link to do this. Once you've gotten your account all up and running, you can just refer your tenants and applicants over to the site to let Our Pet Policy take over and handle all the pet management from there. And for 75 cents a unit, you guys, this is a no-brainer. Pets and ESAs are becoming difficult to stay on top of with all the different laws and ordinances in each state. One wrong move and you could be paying some really hefty fines. There's courses you can take on fair housing, but some states have their own laws that override the FHA ones. Even Kevin and I, who are longtime licensed realtors and property managers, use this service. Leave managing pets to those professionals. That is our show for today. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to tune in and listen. Our only hope is to bring awareness to self-managing landlords and in the process, build your confidence and your desire to run your rental property business professionally. We'd love if you'd share our podcast with other landlords you know. Maybe you can send them a link, share it on social media, or talk about us during any meetups that you attend. I'll link ways to give reviews and sign up for our free newsletter we send out each week in the show notes. Take care, and until next time, you've got this, landlords.